If someone had told me 2 years ago that I'd be working beside the most powerful woman in the industry, I would have laughed them off and gone back to waiting tables. Yet there I was standing just outside her glass office in downtown Karachi, holding 2 cups of black coffee, rehearsing how to say, "Your itinerary has been updated, ma'am." I was just an assistant, that's all. No fancy suits, no rich family. Just a quiet guy with a decent mind, a calm voice, and the ability to blend into the background. But that Monday morning, something strange happened. Alina Rahman, CEO of a multi-billion rupee tech empire, the woman who never broke character, who never got personal, called me into her office and said the most unexpected thing. "Zion, I want you to come to my college reunion." I blinked. Once. Twice I thought she was joking. Me? Yes, you. I tried to smile politely. "Ma'am, I think you meant to send this to your driver, or your publicist, or I meant you." Her voice had no cracks, no hesitation. "And not as a staff member. You'll attend as my guest." I stared at her. She was dressed in her signature navy blue suit, her hair pulled into a flawless bun, her silver watch glinting under the morning sun. She looked like someone who belonged in the halls of power next to politicians, celebrities, and founders. I, on the other hand, looked like someone who fetched their coffee. "Ma'am, with all due respect, I'm not exactly qualified." Alina sighed and put her pen down. "Zion, you've handled crisis calls, late-night presentations, press, mishaps, and my father's hospital care, all without a single complaint. You've shown more class, calm, and loyalty than anyone I know. I want you there. End of discussion." She turned back to her screen, and that's how it started. That was the moment the countdown began. 2 weeks later, I stood in front of the mirror of my tiny apartment in Model Colony, holding a freshly ironed suit that I had borrowed from my cousin. It wasn't designer. It wasn't expensive. But it was clean, sharp enough. I could still hear my landlady shouting from the ground floor, "Zion Beta, suit samhalna, kahin press jaldi lag gay tobus." I smiled. No one knew where I was going. No one knew who I was going with. And honestly, even I wasn't sure why I was going at all. Alina had said nothing else since that day. Not a word about the reunion, not a hint of emotion. Just instructions, files and meetings. But deep inside, I could feel something was coming. A shift, and I wasn't sure if I was ready. The night before the reunion, we were working late in her office, preparing slides for an investor pitch. At 10:45 p.m., she finally stood up, stretched, and said, "Tomorrow, 7 p.m., I'll pick you up." I looked up from my laptop. "Ma'am, are you sure? I mean, it's your reunion. Maybe you'd prefer someone who fits in." Her eyes softened. "For once in your life, Zion, don't overthink it. Just show up." She left, and that was that. The next day, as the clock hit 6:58 p.m., a sleek black car rolled into my street. Neighbors peeked from their windows. Kids paused their cricket game. The gate boy whistled. I stepped out in my borrowed suit, heart pounding, palms sweating. Alina stepped out too, and for the first time, she wasn't in a suit. She wore a long, flowing bottle green dress, elegant, royal, her hair curled gently around her shoulders, a gold bracelet on her wrist. Her eyes met mine, and for a second, I forgot how to breathe. "You clean up well," she said, smiling faintly. "You? Look like you could buy the moon," I replied before I could stop myself. She chuckled. "And?" Then we drove. On the way, she told me little things. About how she'd been the only scholarship girl in her class. How her classmates had once made fun of her second-hand shoes. How she had once eaten in the staff canteen to avoid being laughed at by the other girls. In designer Curtis, "They never thought I'd make it," she said quietly, looking out the window. "And now, They still don't think I belong. Even as CEO, I stayed quiet. And they'll definitely think you don't belong either. I looked at her, confused. She glanced back. I'm warning you. They'll laugh. They'll whisper. They might even mock. I swallowed hard. Then why? Take me? She looked away again. Because I don't care about their laughter anymore. And I want them to see what real class looks like. The car slowed down. The lights of the reunion hall shimmered in the distance. I could already see couples in evening gowns, old boys in tuxedos, high heels, perfume clouds, and fake laughter echoing across the marble steps. I felt small, but then I felt her hand touch my arm. Zion, I turned. Just be you. She smiled, and then we stepped out together. The reunion hall looked like something out of a film. Chandeliers hung like crystal clouds, gold-trimmed walls shimmered under soft lighting, and a string quartet played somewhere in the back, their bows gliding over strings as if they knew they were only background noise to the glittering alumni inside. But I dressed in a borrowed navy suit and worn shoes, polished till they shone like hope felt every eye shift when I walked beside her. Alina walked with her signature calm, every step confident. Every gaze returned. But the room? It paused. People whispered. Some gasped. I heard murmurs ripple through the crowd. That's Alina Rahman? She actually came. Who's he? Her driver? No too well dressed. Maybe her cousin? I swallowed. Hard dot. She leaned over and whispered, You okay? I nodded with a smile I wasn't sure I meant. They're staring. They always stare. That's how you know you're doing something right. She held her chin high, and I followed her. Through a sea of silken gowns and tailored tuxedos, I could feel a judgment, mockery, curiosity. It was thick in the air like perfume gone stale. At the far end of the hall stood a cluster of men and women who looked like they'd stepped out of a business magazine. And at the center of it all, laughing too loudly, was a man in a gray suit, with eyes like mirrors reflecting only himself. Samir, Alina said under her breath. An old classmate? An old bully. He noticed her instantly. Alina Rahman. Samir's voice rang out like a loudspeaker coated in sarcasm. You finally decided to show up, Alina offered a calm smile. Good to see you too, Samir. And whose? This? He asked, pointing at me with exaggerated curiosity. Your PA, or is he your tech support? There was laughter. Polite, polished laughter. Alina's eyes didn't flinch. This is Zion. He's with me. With you? Samir chuckled. As in, like, with you? I didn't stutter, she said, voice firm but dignified. The group went silent for half a second. Then the laughter resumed, quieter this time, like a joke whispered behind closed doors. I forced a polite nod. Inside, my ears burned. Alina guided us away. She didn't look back once. We stood by the refreshment table. I watched her quietly sip sparkling water while scanning the room. She wasn't just attending this reunion, she was reclaiming it. I see you didn't bring your laptop. I teased gently. She cracked a small smile. Even I need a day off. You could have brought anyone, you know, a celebrity, a CEO, a billionaire investor. Why? Me? She looked at me for a moment. Because they would have come for the photo ops. You came knowing they'd laugh. I swallowed that slowly. It sat heavy in my chest. Just then, a woman in a crimson sari approached. She was graceful, older, her eyes sharp like someone who never forgot. Alina? She said, warmth hiding something colder. Aisha, Alina nodded. Still topping the alumni fundraising, I see. You know me, Aisha smiled. I believe in giving back. And keeping the school's image intact. She looked at me next. And this is? Zin, I said, offering my hand. She shook it gently as if touching something she wasn't sure was clean. Pleasure. Then to Alina, she added, "You always did challenge expectations." Alina's reply was instant, "And you always lived inside them." Another silence. Then Aisha smiled, turned, and walked away. I exhaled. "She seems intense," Alina smirked. "She once called my shoes social suicide in second year. Classy. She thought I'd never make it, but here I am. And here you are." An hour passed. A slideshow played on the giant screen behind the stage photos from their college years. Alina, in a faded sour camise, books hugged to her chest, staring shyly at the camera. Samir, in sunglasses, arms flung around three boys. Aisha, in debate club trophies. The crowd clapped and chuckled. Then came the open mic. Samir grabbed it first. Of course, he roared into stories about college pranks, loud cars, and rooftop parties. The crowd laughed, cheered. He made a joke about some classmates going from scholarship girls to CEO queens. More laughter. Alina didn't blink. "You don't have to stay," she whispered. "I want to," I replied, "even if they laugh." "At you too?" I looked at her. "Let them. I know who I am. And I know who I'm with." Her expression shifted just slightly. A trace of something deeper. Then the host announced, "Now let's hear from someone we haven't heard in years. Alina Rahman, would you say a few words?" The crowd murmured. Some clapped. Some raised eyebrows. Alina stood still. Then, slowly, she turned to me. "You should go up," she said. I blinked. "Me? Yes. I'm not even an alum." "Exactly." I stared at her. "Why?" "Because they've heard from everyone they expected to hear from. Now they need to hear from someone they didn't." I froze. "Zion," she said, "go show them what they laughed at." My feet felt like they were carved from marble. I looked at her. Alina, the woman everyone admired from a distance, feared from up close, and yet never truly understood. And she was looking at me like I mattered, like my voice could silence a room full of billion-rupee egos. I slowly walked toward the stage. Whispers started again. Someone coughed. A few chuckled. "Who is he again?" "He's not from our batch. Must be her driver or bodyguard." But I walked on. Every step echoed across the wooden floor like a heartbeat amplified. As I climbed the steps, I caught a glimpse of Samir leaning over to a friend, smirking. Aisha narrowed her eyes. Her lips pursed like she smelled something common. I reached the mic. Cleared my throat. "Good evening," I began, my voice steadier than I felt. "I know I'm not one of you." A few laughs already. "I didn't attend this college. I didn't wear your uniforms. I didn't party on your rooftops or sip espresso in your courtyards." I paused. "But I did grow up cleaning classrooms like these. My mother was a janitor in a private school not far from here. I learned the alphabet by reading discarded worksheets. I practiced math with chalk pieces left on the floor." Silence. I never imagined I'd stand in a room like this. Not as a guest. And definitely not beside someone like Alina Rahman. All heads turned toward her. She didn't move. But her eyes were locked on me, calm, proud. I met her 2 years ago when I applied for an office assistant job. I thought I'd be making tea, printing papers, maybe delivering lunch. Instead, I found myself beside a woman who taught me more about dignity than any classroom ever did. I looked at Samir. I've seen her cancel million-dollar meetings to visit a sick child in our staff's family. Then at Aisha, I've watched her stand up for junior employees who were too afraid to speak. And back at the room, and I've heard people laugh behind her back. Not realizing the sound of their laughter only proves how far ahead she's gone. A hush fell. I may not have an elite degree or a famous surname, but I know what integrity looks like. I work for it every day. My voice strengthened. So when you laugh at me for being just an assistant, remember this. If I'm good enough to stand beside a woman like her, I'm good enough to stand in any room." The silence now was sharp. Like glass, I smiled gently. "Thank you." And I stepped down, not a single clap, not yet. But then, one person started, slow, steady. It was Alina, then another, and another. Within moments, the hall echoed with applause, not polite, not forced, but real, resounding, raw. Samir sat still, a twitch in his jaw. Aisha folded her arms, but said nothing. I returned to Alina's side. She didn't say anything either, not yet. But her eyes glistened. "You were wrong," I whispered. "About what?" she asked. They didn't laugh at me. She gave me a soft smile. No, they didn't. We stood there for a moment. Just two people, once outsiders, now standing in the center of a world that once shut them out. But the story wasn't over, not even close. After the applause died down, conversation shifted. The same people who'd mocked earlier now approached me with curiosity. "What's your background again? Ever thought of starting your own firm? We could use someone like you in our team." I answered politely, but my attention remained on one person, Alina. She was standing by the glass balcony, looking out at the skyline. I walked up beside her. "I think you just broke their system," I said. "No," she replied quietly. "We just reminded them that the system doesn't define value." I looked at her, really looked. There was a softness there I hadn't seen before. "A crack in the armor. You okay?" I asked. She nodded. "I wasn't sure tonight would go this way. You took a risk." "I always do," she smiled. "But this time, I didn't take it for business. I took it for something else." Our eyes met. For a second, the city behind her blurred. It was just her and me, and maybe the beginning of something neither of us could name yet. After the applause faded and the crowd scattered into smaller conversations, I found myself standing at the edge of a circle I never thought I'd enter. People shook my hand now. Their voices were softer, their smiles less plastic, but I wasn't here for them. I kept my eyes on Alina, always Alina. She stood near a high table, sipping water again, her fingers grazing the rim of the glass with a kind of absent-minded grace. She looked tired, not from the night, but from years. From battles fought in silence. From people she never let get to her, but they had somehow. I stepped beside her. "Need a rescue?" She glanced at me. "You already did that 20 minutes ago," I smiled. They stopped laughing. "They'll start again tomorrow," she said flatly. People like us who climb out of our expected roles, we threaten the stories they tell themselves. "People like us?" She looked at me. "Don't you see it? You and I, we weren't supposed to be in this room. We weren't invited into their world. We made our own way in." Her words sank in. We, not just her, not just me, we, later. That night, as the event dwindled into background music and dimmed lights, Alina excused herself to freshen up. I leaned against one of the marble pillars, finally breathing. That's when Samir approached. His perfume hit first, strong, expensive, and unnecessary. "Well played, Junior," he said, folding his arms. I stayed still. "You've got quite the mouth on you," he continued, "for someone who probably couldn't afford this place's service charge." "I'm not here to impress anyone," I replied calmly. "Of course not," he smiled coldly. "You're just here because she felt sorry for you." Alina's always had a soft spot for broken projects. The words burned, but I didn't show it. He leaned closer. "Enjoy this moment, Zion, because when this little assistant fairy tale ends, you'll be back where you started, making photocopies and serving tea." I took a step forward, my voice low and steady. "Maybe, or maybe the next time we meet, you'll be sitting across the table begging for a chance to invest in my startup." His eyes narrowed. I walked away. Alina was waiting near the exit. Everything. Okay? She asked. Samir sends his best, I said with a grin. She laughed softly. I always knew you had steel in you. You helped shape it. She turned serious for a moment. You know, Zion, back in college, I used to stand outside this building and wonder if I'd ever be taken seriously. I told myself if I ever became successful, I'd never let anyone else feel that small in my presence. I looked at her. You've kept that promise. She studied me for a long second. Then, for the first time since I'd met her, she reached out and gently adjusted my collar. There, perfect. My heart skipped something it hadn't skipped in years. We drove back in silence, but not the awkward kind. The kind where words aren't needed because something unspoken now fills the space between. When we reached my street, the car slowed. I'll walk you up, she said. Not necessary. I want to. We stepped out. My neighbor across the road paused while feeding his goats. The landlady peeked from her window and almost dropped her teacup. Alina Riemann, walking beside me in her elegant green dress like she belonged in this narrow, uneven street. Not your usual environment, I said, trying to hide a smile. She shrugged. I've walked tougher paths. We reached my gate. I guess this is good night, I said. She nodded. Zion, thank you. For what? For showing them what respect looks like. Not just for me, but for yourself. I hesitated. Then, I said it. You didn't just bring me to prove a point, did you? There it was. The moment. She looked up at me, eyes soft. I brought you because you're the only person who makes me feel like I can be me. Silence. Then her driver called softly from the car. She turned to leave. Pause. Then said over her shoulder, You're not just my assistant, Zion. You never were. And then she was gone, leaving me frozen at my gate, one hand on the lock, the other on my heart. Because for the first time, I didn't just feel respected. I felt seen, truly seen. 2 days had passed since the reunion, and yet the echoes of that night still followed me. Her words, You're not just my assistant, Zion. You never were. They played over and over in my mind like a quiet melody I didn't know how to hum out loud. Monday morning arrived with a strange energy. When I walked into the office, the receptionist greeted me differently. Good morning, Mr. Zion. Not just Zion, not sir as a joke. It carried a weight. A recognition. Something was shifting. And then I got called into the boardroom. Inside sat 3 people. Powerful investors, polished, dignified, rich. And in front of them, a single empty chair. Mine. Alina stood at the head of the table, calm as always, and motioned to me. Sit here, Zion. I hesitated but obeyed. We're presenting a pitch today, she told the investors, and Zion will be leading it. He co-developed the prototype and built the initial model. One of the investors looked at me with a flicker of surprise, but once I began to speak, something changed. They listened. They asked questions. I answered with clarity, poise and purpose. And when the presentation ended, Mrs. Danish, the most influential voice at the table, leaned forward and said, You're not just a great assistant, you're a future partner. Alina simply smiled. Told you. Later that afternoon, we stood together on the balcony outside her office, watching the city pulse with life. You've changed things, I said quietly. She didn't look away from the skyline. No, we changed things. I smiled. So, what happens now? Do I go back to scheduling flights and color-coding calendars? She turned toward me with something soft in her eyes. Something I hadn't seen before. There's no going back, she said. Then she handed me a folder. I opened it. ZAYAN and Raman Ventures Joint Strategic Division. My chest tightened. You're giving me a division? No, she said. I'm giving you a partnership. My voice dropped. Why me? Alina stepped closer. because when I stood alone in that college years ago, praying to survive, I asked God to one day send me someone who wouldn't need impressing, someone who saw me, not my success. Her voice cracked slightly, and somehow you walked in with nothing but honesty and changed everything. I didn't speak. I couldn't. I just stood there, heart swelling with something bigger than gratitude, something that felt like destiny. The next morning, the entire company received an official email. Subject: welcoming Mr. Zion Ahmed as strategic partner. People whispered. Some smiled. Some were shocked, but most clapped when I entered the office that day. The assistant had become a leader. One night, during a layover in a quiet airport lounge, I asked her a question. What's the boldest decision you've ever made? She didn't blink. Taking you to the reunion. Really? I teased. I thought that was just a PR stunt. She chuckled. No, Zion, that was from the heart. And for the first time, she reached out and took my hand, right there in front of staff, strangers, world, and didn't let go. Happened a year later in a garden tucked between towering buildings, under fairy lights and moonlight, surrounded by only those who truly mattered. I stood next to her, not as her assistant, not even as her business partner, but as the man she chose for life. She looked breathtaking in a soft ivory sari, a small smile playing at her lips as she adjusted my collar. You still look like the same Zion, she whispered. I smiled. Only difference is, now I sit beside you, in business, in life, and maybe in your heart. Her eyes gleamed, and she looked away like she always did when words hit too deep. Samir? I heard he had to dissolve one of his ventures after a failed merger. Aisha? Still hosting fundraising galas, still obsessing over appearances. But us? We were building something far more rare. Something real. Something no one could measure in numbers or nameplates. Respect. Belief. And yes, something that felt an awful lot like love. I remember standing in front of all the guests during the final toast and saying, she gave me more than a job, she gave me worth, and then she gave me herself. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. The end.